I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. You know, and I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12 way down the line, but I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time, but now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, you know. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane, you know, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it. Every country's had a violent revolution for one reason or the other. Not one of them has the freedom we're all talking about. So we're saying give peace a chance, you know, like nobody's ever done it before. And it's not a matter of, we're not thinking in terms of 10 years, we're thinking in terms of peace forever, you know. And everybody's talking about now. I want peace now. We can get peace now if we want it now. And the left wing talk about giving the power to the people. You know, anybody knows that the people have the power. All we have to do is awaken the power in the people. The people are unaware. It's like they're not educated to realize that they have power. They put the politicians in power. They vote for the local mayor. The people do it. But the system is so geared that everybody believes that just the father will fix everything. The father being the government. Government will fix everything. It is all government's fault. You know, shake your fist at the government. Well, we are the government. The people are the government, and the people have the power, but we must try and make them aware of this. And Yoko was telling me about this great old ancient Chinese book, which tells you how to fight a battle, you know. And it says the battle is always lost within the castle, you know, like America's falling within, not from the commies coming. That it's falling apart inside. And this book on how to fight the good fight says that never have every door shut. The enemy then will... Everybody's going to come round and attack. But if you leave one door open, you know where they're going to come in, and then you get them. So intuitively, we're doing that. And we leave a door open. They're so busy shouting about haircuts and genitals and naked and long hair that they concentrate their ammunition there. We know where it comes from, and we get on with the job of selling or doing whatever we're doing. And I believe that. You leave the door open, man, and that's where the door they'll come in, you know. As a Beatle, we made it, and there was nothing to do. You know, we had money, we had fame, and there was no joy. You know. And then I met Yoko, and she was making it as an avant-garde artist, and we both tried to find something we had in common, a common goal in life, because she couldn't rock and roll with me, and I couldn't avant-garde with her. I mean, we can, but that's what we thought at the time. So we decided the thing we had in common was love, and from love came peace. So we decided to work for world peace.
And how do you do that?
We do it by the advertising method. We believe that today's society, advertising is the thing politicians use and commercial companies use. The Beatles use it. John and Yoko should use it. Our product is peace. Of less words and more peace. I think the only way to do it is Gandhi's way. And that's non-violent, passive, positive, or whatever they called it those days. You know. We're selling it like soap, you know. And you've got to sell and sell until the housewife thinks, oh, well, there's peace or war. That's the two products. Peace.
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 Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace. Peace.
Peace in your mind, peace on earth, peace at work, peace at home, peace in the world.
It's to try and get people orientated to think peace, like eat for peace, breathe for peace, and dance for peace, and make love for peace, you know. To just have the peace like a mantra going round and round in your head. War is a game that's gone too far, you know. It's just like we've all just woken up one morning and thought, is it a dream, is it a nightmare, what's been going on? And we're all just trying to make the next day a bit better. Oh yeah. Don't want to waste all this film on our face, do we? We specifically did the poster event around the world for Christmas to try and get at least one plug-in for peace on earth at Christmas, because that's what it's about. And happy birthday, Christ, you know, is what it's about.
If you had one wish for Christmas time, what would it be?
Peace.
Peace on earth. Yeah.
And love.
Peace on earth. That implies no violence, no starving children, no violent minds, no violent households, no violence,
frustration.
no frustration, no fear. If some housewife is against war, just put it in the window, you know, just to let her neighbours know or her husband know. You know, you've got to start on the home ground, like convert your parents. We think we have the right to have a say in the future, and we think the future is made in your mind. It says it, you know, war is over if you want it.
Wetiko Part 4. One of the reasons we can't see a vampire's reflection in a mirror, however, is because our own inner, unconscious vampire obscures the reflection, which is to say that the unacknowledged spectre of our own shadow gets in the way. A vampire casts no shadow. In order to cast a shadow, there has to be a source of light. In a vampire there is no light, only infinite darkness. Not being a living being, a vampire has no inherent reality, no substance. Only a thing of substantial existence can produce a shadow. Vampires can't cast a shadow, however, because they are the living embodiment of an identical with the archetypal shadow. A shadow casts no shadow of itself, as the shadow itself has no substance. There are benefits that accrue to the vampire because of its ability to not cast a shadow. It is then easier for the vampire to hide its true identity, move in the hidden shadows, become invisible, and be able to prey on people. Not casting a shadow, the vampire, a shapeshifter who is a master of camouflage and disguise, is able to easily seduce and entice the unaware, as sugar-coated vampires entrap us through our unconscious shadow and blind spots. This is to say that the loss and disowning of our shadow can lead to vampirism. The vampire archetype gets activated within us when we turn our backs on our own darkness, rendering our shadow invisible to ourselves. We can't see vampires because we have chosen not to see those aspects of ourselves that are most like the vampire. Our reluctance to see our own vampiric qualities blinds us to the vampiric energies in others. In addition to the weak and defenseless, vampires seek out people who are on the verge of a quantum evolutionary leap in consciousness but have not yet fully integrated the realizations and come out the other side. These individuals are in an energetically sensitive and charged condition, and their openness and vulnerability invites the vampiric entities to help themselves and gorge on the light of their expanding awareness. The strategy of these predators is to distract us so as to keep our attention directed outwards, thereby stopping us from finding the light within ourselves, which would kill the vampires. If we hold up a mirror and reflect back the insanity being exhibited by those stricken by the Wetiko psychosis, we run the very real risk of being accused of being the ones who are crazy. If we manage to connect with the light within ourselves and try to share it with others, these non-local vampiric entities, what I have in previous articles called non-local demons, or NLD for short, not bound by the third-dimensional laws of space and time, will try via the connections to the non-local field to stop us by influencing other people to turn against us. This process can destroy us, or, if we have the meta-awareness to see what is happening and are able to skillfully navigate our way through, can serve to further strengthen our intention, deepen our connection with the light of lucidity, hone our skill of creatively transmitting our realizations, and cultivate more open-hearted compassion. It is as if these psychic, non-local vampires are guardians of the threshold of evolution. Just like vampires, full-blown Wetikos have a thirst for the very thing they lack, the mystical essence of life, i.e., the blood of our soul. In consuming other human beings, Wetiko disease is a feeding thing, a psychic eating disorder in which the stricken psyche consumes other psyches, as well as, ultimately, itself. Wetikos are what are called psychophagic, i.e., soul eaters. Savaged by the ferocity of their unending hunger, full-blown Wetikos have become possessed by an insatiable craving that can never be filled. This vampiric feeding is an unholy parody, a satanic reflection, of the self-renewal of life. This perverse inner process is mirrored collectively by the consumer society in which we live, a culture that continually fans the flames of never-ending desires, conditioning us to always want more. As if starving, we are in an endless feeding frenzy, trying to fill a bottomless void. This process of rabid, obsessive-compulsive consumption is a reflection of a deeper, inner shared sense of spiritual starvation. The entity of the global economic system itself is a living symbol of out-of-control Wetiko disease in business. Viruses like Wetiko are all about copying themselves. A virus can't replicate itself, however, it has to use some other vehicle as its means of reproducing itself. They need us to be the birthing chamber. To the extent we are not aware of the ploy, these higher dimensional spirit parasites put us on, wearing us like the third dimensional space suits. These psychic vampires are compelled to replicate themselves through us so that we can then pass on and transmit the bug to others. This process is analogous to when someone is infected with the rabies virus. In advanced stages of the disease, like a rabid animal, they will be taken over by the irresistible urge to bite other creatures so as to pass on the virus. People taken over by the rabies virus are a living, frothing symbol of what the Wetiko virus does in its full-blown virulent stage. In a vampiric lineage, the Wetiko virus's self-propagation is accomplished through the medium of the family system, be it our family of origin or the human family, as the legacy of abuse, be it physical, sexual, political, emotional, psychological, or spiritual, gets passed down, both individually and collectively, and transmitted over generations, continually incarnating itself through the living. It is through the traumatic shattering of our wholeness that Wetiko passes its fractured logic and distorted code into the body, mind of another. As if under a curse, our species has been suffering from a collective, inherited form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Remaking the victims in their own image, the Wetikos victims join the Legion of the Damned, themselves becoming holders of an unholy lineage. This curse will continue until we intervene in the spreading of this vampiric mind parasite and the chain of never-ending abuse is stopped. Highly contagious. Speaking about Wetikos, Forbes says they are insane, unclean in the true sense of the word. They are mentally ill and tragically, the form of soul sickness that they carry is catching. Wetiko psychosis is highly contagious, spreading through the channel of our shared unconsciousness. Its vectors of infection and propagation do not travel like a physical pathogen. This fluidly moving, nomadically wandering bug reciprocally reinforces, feeds off of and into each of our unconscious blind spots, which is how it non-locally propagates itself throughout the field. In Wetiko there is a coda logic which infects awareness in an analogous way to how the DNA in a virus passes into and infects a cell. People who are channeling the vibratory frequency of Wetiko align with each other through psychic resonance to reinforce the shared agreement so as to uphold the deranged view of reality. Collaboratively supporting the mutual psychosis, groups of people drawn together by the unconscious can potentially become a socio-political force with which to be reckoned. When a group of people are in agreement about anything, whether it is true or not, their alignment with each other exerts a contagious, magnetic field of force which can sway and attract the unaware into itself. People taken over by the Wetiko virus usually don't suspect a thing about how they have been conned. The Wetiko culture offers no incentive for them to self-reflectingly speculate upon the depraved circumstance. On the contrary, the non-local field configures itself to conspire, enable and further cultivate the psychosis. When someone is a full-blown, unrecognized Wetiko, the field around them talks so as to protect, collude with, and feed into the psychosis in a way that entrances everyone around them. Once under the Wetiko spell, they lose the capacity to recognize the Wetiko pathology in others. In a situation of group narcissism, Wetikos at different stages of the disease assume particular postures and roles relative to each other so as to protect and shield themselves from their own insanity and darkness. They feed and reinforce each other's narcissism because it enhances their own. Speaking about the type of person who is typically susceptible to fall prey to the Wetiko virus, Forbes writes that it is usually the individual whose strings are pulled by others or who follow a life path dictated by others. Thus they are ripe for the Wetiko infection. Not in touch with their inner guidance, they project authority outside of themselves and become very suggestible to the consensus, agreed upon opinion of the dominant pack. Losing touch with their own discernment and ability for critical thinking, the mass man becomes part of the mindless herd and falls prey to groupthink, whose members codependently enable each other to uphold the shared version of the Wetiko world. The group consensus about the nature of reality gets increasingly harder to sustain as time passes, however, as, like a house of cards ready to collapse at any moment, the vision of the world is based on the fundamental error of not being true. Strangely enough, people under the collective enchantment of Wetiko become fanatically attached to supporting an agenda that oftentimes is diametrically opposed to serving their own best interest. This is an outer reflection of the inner state of being under the sway of the self-destructive Wetiko parasite. By being unclean, it is as if there is an unholy or evil spirit that has taken up residence in the beings of those taken over by Wetiko. They are unwittingly being used as instruments, as covered operatives of this darker, unclean spirit to proliferate itself in the wider field. Secret agents of the disease. Wetiko's secret is self-secret, in that it is secret even to themselves. As is true for any of us when we are taken over by something other than ourselves, carriers of Wetiko don't know how possessed they are at any given moment. The experience of being taken over by something more powerful than themselves always happens in the blind spot seer we possessed. The Wetiko bug influences our perceptions by stealth and subterfuge so as to hide and obfuscate itself from being seen. Like a high-dimensional, alien form of psychic foliage, the Wetiko germ implants its seeds into and takes root and germinates within our mind, distracting and deviating us from our true vocation, calling and spiritual path. The alien and alienating effect of the Wetiko virus, the very thing we need to see, is disguised by the way we think, perceive, and give meaning to our experience. When someone becomes a full, card-carrying member of the cult of Wetiko, see the bush cult, it is as if the mind has been colonized by the virus in such a way that they themselves don't have the slightest clue about their own pathological condition. Wetikos don't experience themselves as needing help, for them other people are always the problem. They usually don't mind the disease or even recognize it because it is all they know, and the leaders and the very society they live in encourage them in it. They neither have an appreciation of the disorder, nor do they realize how truly sick they are. Forbes writes, one of the major traits characterizing the truly evil and extreme form of Wetikoism is arrogance. In being full-blown, Wetikos are arrogantly puffed up with their own self-importance, i.e., inflated. Instruments for evil, Wetikos are arrogantly, ignorantly and self-righteously convinced they are in possession of the truth and working for the highest good. It is as if they are unable to know that what they are doing is evil, unable to register their actions as anything other than good. Forbes concludes, in any case, the Wetiko disease, the sickness of exploitation, has been spreading as a contagion for the past several thousand years. And as a contagion unchecked by most vaccines, it tends to become worse rather than better with time. More and more people catch it, in more and more places, and they become the true teachers of the young. Wetiko culture gets taught both at home and in the academy, where people become certified in the ways of its world, and are thus accredited and empowered to spread its corrupting ways on ever grander scales. Speaking about the rapidly spreading Wetiko contagion, Forbes writes, it is spread by the Wetikos themselves as they recruit and corrupt others. It is spread today by history books, television, military training programs, police training programs, comic books, pornographic magazines, films, right-wing movements, fanatics of various kinds, high-pressure missionary groups, and numerous governments. All of the mainstream, culturally sanctioned, corporatized institutions are in the business of indoctrination, telling us what to think and not think about, as well as how to think. Our mind is continually being massaged into shape by the prevailing culture, as if our true face is being lifted. It is as if our spiritual pockets are being picked. Our civilization has become the mouthpiece for the propaganda organ of the disease, entrancing us to buy into its viewpoint as we are bled to death of what really counts most. The culture that informs and forms around Wetiko illness is itself a channel of its transmission, and if we sign on the dotted line and subscribe to its viewpoint, its life-denying culture will gradually subsume us into itself, as we become unwitting agents doing its bidding. This is how the ever-expanding, self-generating psychic empire of collective psychosis works, as it takes over and increasingly approaches full employment. Full-blown Wetikos might be petty tyrants at home or at work, but still might be one of the impoverished and oppressed wielding no real power in the world at large. What Forbes refers to as big Wetikos are full-blown Wetikos who have climbed the Wetiko ladder, jumped through the Wetiko hoops, and have risen in the Wetiko ranks so as to find themselves occupying positions of power where they can influence and control events in our world so as to game the system. The big Wetikos who control the levers of power, be they the super wealthy CEOs of corporations, bank presidents, leaders of nation-states, are particularly dangerous as they define the terms of our dialogue, dominating the agreed-upon historical narrative, managing our perceptions through the propaganda engines of the mainstream corporate media which they control. See, the war on consciousness. Big Wetikos in positions of power create the limits of our conversation and debate. Wetiko is an ideological virus whose currency is the syntax of ideas. Wetiko deviates our mental syntax, i.e., the rules of how we form language, thereby distorting the semantics, the meaning we place on our experience of ourselves and the world. Wetiko is a semantic disorder, as it alters the axioms through which the psyche shapes, casts and spells its words, thereby conjuring up its experiences. The thought forms and beliefs that express and represent the Wetiko virus act as an intrinsic built-in control system, defining the limits of what we imagine our possibilities are as individuals, nations and as a species. Wetikoism supports and perpetuates whatever prevailing myths, stories, dogmas and unholy books reinforce its nefarious, self-serving agenda. Books, and other forms of information, which don't support Wetiko's warped version of the way things are metaphorically speaking, burned or in some cases, literally the books of the aforementioned Wilhelm Reich, for example, were actually burned by the United States government. In describing what he called the emotional plague, Reich was in his own way pointing at the evils of the Wetiko virus. We live inside of a world that, like a dream, is an interactive mirror inseparable from our own inner being. A reflection of a condition deep within ourselves. Wetiko disease is an unmediated, direct manifestation of the dreamlike nature of our universe, which is the very realization that Wetiko is showing us. Recognizing the dreamlike nature of our situation creates a living antibody made out of awareness itself that is custom designed to neutralize the psychic pathogen of Wetiko. This is to say that encoded within the deadly pathology of Wetiko is an insight and revelation which is its own cure. See, shadow projection is its own medicine. Its own self-revelation. Wetiko disease provides its own psychic medicine, but in order to receive its healing benefits we have to recognize and more deeply understand this miracle in psycho-spiritual health care. How amazing, the very thing that is potentially destroying us is at the same time waking us up. A potential catalyst for our evolution as a species. We are all co-creating and dreaming Wetiko up together. Wetiko is a truly quantum phenomenon, in that it is the deadliest poison and the most healing medicine co-joined in one superposed state. Will Wetiko kill us or will it awaken us? Everything depends upon if we recognize what it is potentially revealing to us. The prognosis for Wetiko, malignant egophrenia, depends upon how we dream it. Now that we have the geonosis and pronosis, all we need is to discover the cure, which requires having gnosis itself. By Paul Levy from Reality Sandwich website and Facebook, with small changes made to the layout for the online reader, spelling and references to globe and planet being substituted for Earth, as we do not live on a spinning ball hurtling through space. This is just another lie, and as this is for educational purposes, I cannot deceive the audience that this is intended for. Thank you.